In this tutorial we're going to look at text formatting. So we are going to learn how to set the leading, which is the space between the lines of text. We can make that as wide or as narrow as we want. Similarly, we're going to look at the space between the columns of text. This is called the gutters, and we can have wide gutters or narrow gutters depending on the style of our magazine. We're going to look at the style of each paragraph, the indentations on the first lines, maybe a drop cap letter for the intro, and then we're going to put all these decisions together in one paragraph style and set it so you can just click on this paragraph style and it will format the text consistently throughout your magazine pages. So I'm on the startup menu. I'm going to go to Mag Layout, which is my document, double click, and this is where we left it. So on my front page I haven't got any headlines to tell the reader what's inside the publication. You can have as many or as few of these as you want depending on the style of the magazine and your audience and what you think is going to appeal to them. So I'm just going to draw a text box and put one inside. So I go to my left hand tools panel and I click on the T and I draw a text box somewhere in the middle of the page, like so. So the cursor is flashing. I'm going to make up a feature idea for a fashion magazine, catwalk dressing, I'm going to say. Now we can't see the text because it's too small and it's black and it's sitting against a black background or a grey background. So what I need to do is change the size of the font and the colour of the font and maybe the font itself if I want a different one. So to do all of those things I need to firstly highlight my text. So highlight it using the mouse or Control A or Command A if you're on a Mac, and I can see there my block of text is highlighted. So I'm going to firstly change the size, use the drop down menu, and I'm going to take it to 48 point. I'm now going to change the colour so I can see it clearly. At the minute it's black on grey, so I can either go to my swatches panel over here where we went to before and click on a different one, different colour, or I can go up here to this box. There's a big T for text and next to it is a little arrow for fill, and that tells you it's going to fulfill the same function as the swatches panel. It's going to change the colour of your text fill. So I can click on that and I'm just going to go for white and click off it. And so I have catwalk dressing. So I think the size is okay, that's about right. I'm not sure about the font. Maybe I want to try a more modern font to sit against my serif masthead. So I'm going to click in the text box, Control A, highlight my text again and have a look at my fonts. So I can choose from a lot of different fonts, some very modern, some very old-fashioned. I'm just going to go for a basic modern one, Futura. I'm going to click on that. It's quite a narrow font, which can be useful for headlines on the side of pages because you can fit more words in. And I'm going to write catwalk dressing. I'm going to write 50 best styles. And I might want that to go over 4 or 5 decks rather than 3. This is just 3 decks, 1, 2, 3. If I make the box a bit narrower, it will take it over 4, and I think that looks better. So I'm going to leave it like that. Move it over to the side of the page there. What I can also do is change the font for the second half of it, so I can have 50 best styles in a different font to catwalk dressing. That's quite common on the front page of magazines. You can see a mixture of fonts now, modern and old-fashioned mixed together, or you can have it all the same. It's up to you. These are all style decisions for you. So just to show you, I'm just going to change the 50 best styles, and I'm going to go back up to the drop down menu and pick a scripted font. Snell Round Hand, that's a more scripty font, so I'm quite different to Futura, which I've picked for catwalk dressing. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to click off, and that's what it will look like. And remember, when you're on your selection tool on the top, if you press W, it will show you what it's going to look like, the finished product. So there I can see that's what my blurb for the inside feature looks like. Now I want to look at the actual leading of these words, and the leading is the space in between each line, the space in between catwalk and dressing, the space in between dressing and 50 best, and the space in between 50 best and styles. These bits here, this is the leading, and this is directly related to the font size that you use. The general rule is the bigger the font size you use, the higher the leading will have to be. And it also depends on the style of font that you've used as to what way the leading works. So if I click in the box again and I highlight all my text, Control A, and I go up here to my font size, it's at that set of 48, and underneath is my leading. This is the leading box. I can see that the leading is set quite a bit higher than the font size. And as letters get bigger, the normal rule is that the leading needs to be bigger, increasingly bigger than the font size. So I'm going to set it back to 48, the leading, to let you see what it looks like when it's the same as the font size. So that's the leading, the same as the font size. I'm going to click off it, press W, and you can see that the spaces between each line are much narrower. So if I was to highlight my text and go even lower than the font size, you can see it really squashes up the leading and it's more difficult to read. So for the style of this magazine front, which is quite bare, I want quite a bit of space in between my headline words. So I'm going to increase the leading. I'm going to keep going, 50, 51, 55, 57. So I might look at that and think I like the leading in between this kind of font, because this is a different font to the top font. The leading can look different, so I might want to just change the leading between the first two lines and make that even bigger. Or I might have it all the same. It looks more equal now, even though the leading between catwalk and dressing is at 62 and the leading between 50 best styles is at 57. So even though there's different leading, it's because we've got two different fonts, and when it's all the one leading, it doesn't look quite equal. So I think that's okay. But leading is really, the point of this is that leading is really down to the style of the font that you use and the size of the font. So both of those things are taken into consideration. There's no hard and fast rules on leading. But as I say, the smaller the words, the lower the leading will be, and the bigger the words, the bigger the leading will be. So it generally works like that. So now I've got a little headline blurb as to what's inside. If I wanted, I could change the colour on one of those as well as the style. That's up to you. Obviously, to change the colour, you just do the same thing. You highlight whichever bit of the text you want to change the colour to, go to your swatches, or you can go up here to this arrow, either which one, change it to yellow if you wanted, but probably not, that's not brilliant looking, so you might not want that, but that's the general idea. You can change both the colour and the font all in one headline for a magazine, should you wish. So I'm going to undo that. And Control Z is your best friend in InDesign. If you make any mistakes, or you press things and they do things that you didn't want because you don't understand the function of the button, don't worry, just keep your Control Z and do that. And you can go back, you can undo quite a few moves. So it's not a problem if you make mistakes, you can always get back to where you were. So that's it for the front page leading. If we go down and we look at body formatting, as in body copy formatting, body is what we call the main text of a feature. So these are headline styles, and the copy that the feature comprises is body copy. There's an intro and then the rest of the feature, which is body copy. So in order to get some text on the page, I'm firstly going to draw a text box here, like that, and then I'm going to draw a text box all the way on this second page, covering the whole page. So I need to make sure that these two boxes are linked, because I want to make sure that whatever text I put in this first box, when this first box is full, the text flows into this box, if it's all the same feature. This is assuming this feature is a double page spread, so I need the boxes to be linked. So to link boxes is quite easy. I go down to this larger square on the right hand side of the first text box. The smaller squares are how you change the size of the text box, by dragging it in and out. The bigger square is how you link them. So you literally click on that and you can see the cursor has changed. And if I move over the second text box, it brings up a link sign and I just click on it. And these two boxes are now linked. And I know they're linked because that square has changed now to have a little arrow in it. And so has the one up here on this, and that means they are linked. I can see clearly when I click on them that they're linked. So in order to get some text for the page, because we don't have any features yet, we're going to fill it with placeholder text. So to do that, we click in the first text box and the cursor is flashing, and we go to Type menu at the top, scroll all the way down, and you can see Fill with Placeholder Text. I click that and it has filled both boxes because they are linked. If they weren't linked, it would only have filled that first box and left the second box empty. But they're linked boxes now, so they're all filled with copy. So this is where I am. This is just raw copy brought, unformatted copy, that if you copy and pasted something you had written from a Word document or on a website and you just put it into the page, this is what it would look like, totally unformatted. So there's a number of issues with the text that I might want to fix. And the first thing I'm going to look at is columns. So at the minute, the text is all in one big block of column reading all the way across on both sides of the page. So I can change this to however many columns I want. A quick way of changing it is to click on the text box that you want to change and go up here to this symbol on the top right, which, as you can see, if I hover over it says number of columns. I can change that to however many I want. There it's gone to 2 columns, 3 columns, 4, 5, which is obviously far too narrow. So I'm going to leave it at 3 columns. However, this is the quick shortcut to do it. So if I want to change anything else about the columns, i.e. the guttering, which is this space, this white space in here between the columns, I need to go to another menu, which I need to go to Object, menu at the top, and Text Frame Options. If I click that, I can see the number of columns I've set as a 3, and I can see the gutter is set at 4.233 millimeters. So that's how I change the space in between those columns. I'm thinking, I'll just cancel that. If I click off this page and we press W, and I can see then how my columns are going to look. I think these 3 columns they have a bit of white space, but probably for the style I'm going for, I would like a bit more space. But if you were doing a different kind of magazine that was maybe a business magazine and it was more newsy in its content, you might want less white space than you would in a more fashion magazine or music or whatever. It really depends on the content of the magazine you've got. There's no right or wrongs for it. The most important thing is with these decisions that you're consistent in the way you use them across your pages. So I might want to change that guttering. So I'm going to click on my text box there and go back to Object, Text Frame Options, and I'm going to put that guttering up to 10 millimeters and see what that looks like. Click OK, and there I can see, if I click off the page, the gutter is now quite a bit wider. If I didn't like that, all I have to do is Control Z and it puts it straight back to the way it was. So it's not a problem. You can mess about and change guttering and styles until you get them exactly how you like them by changing them, using Control Z to undo them, and pressing W to keep your guides on and off. And if you, this gives you an idea of how everything's going to look. So I'm going to go back to text frame options and put my guttering back up to 10 millimeters, which I think is nicer because it's wider. Gives us a much wider bit of space here. Another thing I'm going to look at for this page is the formatting of the edges of the copy. So you can see on these columns that the left hand side is completely straight and the right hand side is what we call ragged. And you see this in word processing as well. You can always change the style of the sides of the text. So if I just highlight all my text, and it will highlight it all on both pages, but that's okay because it's all one feature and I want it to be the same. I can see up here, you've probably seen these kind of formatting symbols before. At the minute, it's on a line left, which is a straight left hand side, and a ragged right side. You could change it to center, but that's unusual that you would want to do that because it makes it difficult to read. Because we read left to right, it is easier for us to read if the left hand side is straight. We don't use that option very much because that makes the right hand side straight. We might use that for captions, which we will get onto, but not for body copy really. News publications tend to have this one justified on both sides with the last line aligned left. So if we did that, it looks like that. If I just click off it, you can see there that that's what it looks with straight edges, which you might prefer. Some magazines have got justified on both sides with wide gutters. Others have slightly less wide gutters and keep it ragged on one side. So I'm going to change, I'm going to Control Z and Control Z and Control Z, and I'm back to where I was with it aligned left and a ragged right hand side. So I'm going to leave my copy like that. It is quite a featurey style to do that, as I say. Justified on both sides is a bit more newsy looking. But there's no hard and fast rules, especially not with magazines. They're made to be broken, so you can develop your own style as you see fit, as long as you're consistent with it. So the next thing I'm going to look at, I've decided I wanted aligned left and ragged right. The next thing I'm going to look at is the leading of the copy. I can see the leading is quite big. There's quite a big space between each line, which might suit me, which might suit the style I'm going for. And the best way to figure out what suits it is to try a few different ones. So firstly, I'm going to zoom in on this text a bit more so I can see it a bit more clearly. To do that, I'm on a Mac with a trackpad, which means I can just use that. But for the PCs, you might want to use this zoom tool on the left hand side, and you click on it and you can see the cursors change to a magnifying glass with a plus sign in the middle. The plus sign in the middle is telling you you're zooming in, you're getting a bigger size. So if I just click on the mouse, move the page over a bit and keep clicking, I can click right in on the copy till I'm really up close to it. And when we're designing pages, we want to be a mixture of up close to the letters and far back so we can see overall how things look, and also so we can be close up and fix any problems with it. So you probably want to get used to zooming in and out of pictures and text to check that you have things right. So I can keep on pressing to go zoom in closer. Then if I think I've zoomed in too much, I can just hold Alt down and you can see that the magnifying glass has changed to having a minus in it, and then click and it will take me out. So I take my finger off Alt and just click the mouse and we go in. I click on Alt and we go out. So that's how you zoom into the kind of size you want. That'll do for me. I just want to have a look at leading. So I want to have an overall look at the text but be a bit closer up to it. So I want to make some changes to the leading, try out some different ones. So I need to first go on my text tool and highlight all my copy. Control A. And that tells InDesign I wanted to make changes to all of this copy. So if I look up here, I can see that my copy size is at 12 and I can see my leading is at 14.4. So if I just make my leading the same size as my copy and I click off it, that's what it will look like. Do I think that's right? Do I think that's a bit squashed? I think I probably would like a bit more space between my lines than that. And leading generally is either the same size or a bit bigger than the fonts. And again, as I said, the bigger the font you use, the higher the leading goes. So we're on quite a small size here because it's body copy. We're on 12. So if I Control A and I go back to my leading, I'm going to push my leading up to 13. And I might push my copy size down to 11. And that's going to give me some nice space, I think, between the lines. They're not too jammed up, but they're not too far away from each other. Again, it's up to you, these decisions, and it does depend on the font you use. But when we talk about body copy style, which is 11 or 12 generally, 11 points or 12 points, leading tends to be around and about a point to 2 points bigger than the font. But you have to try it out and see what looks best. So that's my leading. I think that's okay. So now I've got my leading and I've got my gutters fixed and I've got my style justification for the column straight down one, ragged on the right. So the next thing I need to do to format my copy is make it readable. And the way the way we aid readers the way we guide them through our copy is by indenting paragraphs. All books have indented paragraphs, and if you look at newspaper articles and magazine articles, the majority of them, well, not all of them, because it can be a style not to do it. It's quite a modern style not to do it, but it does help the reader get through the copy. So I like to indent my paragraphs. So to do that, I click on the T, double click in the box, highlight all my copy, and now I need to go to paragraph styles, or paragraph rather, sorry, not paragraph styles. Mine are here, paragraph and paragraph styles. If you don't have them there, you can go to type menu at the top and click on paragraph and it will come up. And then you can just click on that little double arrow, double chevron there, and it will push it back into the side menu. So I want paragraph, and this is these are my choices for paragraph. The first one will indent all the lines of the copy in, however many millimeters I want it to, but I don't want it to be all indented because in effect that's the same as no indents. It's all straight all the way down. I want the first line of each paragraph to be indented. Not each line, each paragraph. So that's this second box down, first line left indent. I click on the arrow next, and you can see as I click on it, 1, 2, 3 millimeters, the first line of each paragraph is indenting. Now you can indent as much or as little as you like. Again, it's a style thing. Newspapers tend to be indented at 3 millimeters. However, magazines, because they have very different styles, might decide to do really quite a big indent. That's 10 millimeters. Or you might think that's a bit much. You might go down to 5. I'm going to go down to 5 millimeters. I think that's okay. But again, it's not set in stone and you can choose whichever you like. So I'm at 5 millimeters indentation there. I'm going to click off the copy so I can see what it looks like. And there you can see that anywhere, if I click in this text anywhere and I put a paragraph in by pressing enter, it indents it by 5 millimeters. And so that's what all of my new paragraphs will be indented with. And that helps the reader. It guides the reader through the copy because it stops it looking like a big solid block of text. So I've got my copy all indented on my paragraphs, but my first paragraph, my intro, is not standing out at the minute because it looks the same as all the other paragraphs. And part of the reason intros look a bit different is it tells the reader this is where you start reading from. So I want people to know that this paragraph here is the intro to the feature. So the first thing I'm going to do is take the indent off the first paragraph so it's straight to the edge, and that immediately makes it look different. So to do that, I just click in the first paragraph and I go back to my paragraph box and I take my first line indent off. And because I'm only in that first paragraph and I haven't highlighted the rest of the text, it won't affect the rest of the text, just the first one, just the paragraph I'm in. So now I can see that my intro looks slightly different to my other pars. What features and magazines often have is what's called a drop cap, and that is the initial letter of the first paragraph can be much bigger than the rest of them, and that really tells the reader this is where you start reading from. So to do that, I just leave my cursor in the first paragraph where it is, and I go back to my paragraph box, and I see this box down here where you can see a capital A in it. If you hover over it, it says drop cap number of lines. And this means whatever you set this at is the number of lines that the drop cap will take up. So if I go 1 line, it's not going to make any difference because it's already on 1 line. 2 lines, you can see it gets bigger. It covers the 2 lines. I can go 3 lines for even bigger, 4 lines if I want it really big. It's up to you. Again, it depends on the style of the magazine as to what way you want that to look. You don't have to have a drop cap. It's just an option for a magazine. So I'm going to leave it at 3. I'm going to leave mine at 3 lines. I think that's big enough. And so you can see when we look at it now that the feature has got a clear start. It's flush out on the first par, and the drop cap letter is big, and it lets the reader know this is where you start. Other magazines have different styles. Some magazines make all of the copy in the first paragraph slightly bigger, a point bigger, 2 points bigger even. And again, that's a way of telling the reader this is the first par. Some magazines might change the colour. They might make the colour red. I don't like that, but some magazines do it. It's entirely up to you. So I'm going to undo all of them, and I'm just going to have mine the same size as the rest of the copy with a drop cap. But again, it's up to you what way you do it. You might prefer it to be, or you could have it bold. And if you want to bold up your copy or make it italic, you do what you'd normally do. You highlight it all using your mouse, and you go up to the box underneath the fonts. And if you click on that, it gives you the options for that font. Now, as you can see, Minion Pro doesn't come with a bold option, so I can't actually make that paragraph bold. To do that, I would have to go and use a different font which had bold in its drop-down menu, which lots do. So that's a way of playing about with different fonts. But that's how you get bold or black or italic, is this box underneath, if the font has it. So I've decided, I've got my paragraph style set. I've decided on my leading. I'm at 11-point font size, which I've decided on. I've decided on 13-point leading. I've decided on a drop cap over 3 lines. And for the from the second paragraph onwards, to be indented by 5 millimeters. So because we don't want to have to keep doing this every time we put copy into the page, we can set this as the paragraph styles, which just allows you to click on that style and it will make all those changes. So once you've made your decision as to how you want your copy to be formatted, what you can do is go to paragraph styles this time, not paragraph. Go to paragraph styles. You can see it's just set as a basic paragraph, which is not what we want, because a basic paragraph is unformatted text. We have formatted our text, so we want to save this style. So if you make sure that your cursor is in the paragraph of the style that you want to copy, and you just go down to the bottom here, you can see create new style, that little new page with a fold up corner. You click on that and it's put me a paragraph style 1 in there. So that name isn't much use to me because it doesn't really tell me anything. So if I double click on it and I go into it, I can see at the top I can change the style name. So I'm going to change it to intro, because that's the style I've picked for my intro. I am in the intro box when I've done this. My cursor's in the intro box, and I'm going to change that style, which is outlined here. Size 11, point font, 13-point leading, a drop cap over 3 lines. They are the specifics of the style. I have called it intro. I'm going to click OK. And that means I can click on any paragraph in this copy, and should I wish to, change it to intro style. Sometimes magazines have drop caps 2 or 3 times throughout a feature if they're starting on a new section of the feature. So here, for example, you might move the copy down because you're starting on a new section, and all I'd have to do to change it to the same style as that is click on intro, and it's done the same thing. It's done it full out to the edge with a drop cap on it, just like the first one. So as I can do that for my intro, I can do it for all of my paragraphs. So for the rest of my paragraphs, they're all the same. So I want a body copy style that I can copy throughout. So I click in a paragraph that has that style. So the second paragraph has the style for the rest of the body copy. So I do go back to my paragraph styles, click on create new style. It's brought me up another paragraph style 1. So I double click on it. I can see the contents of that: 11-point leading, 11-point font, 13-point leading, and the first line indent 5mm. It's got no drop cap because that's for the intro only. So I'm going to call that style body copy and click OK. And that means I have some paragraph styles formatted so that when I just bring raw text onto the page, I can just click in that text, highlight it all if I want to change it to all, or if I just want one paragraph, just click in and change it. So when I'm there, I can click on body copy. So now we have the style set. We need to make sure the whole piece is done in it. So we've set the styles that we want to look at, and the last thing you need to do when you do that is to click Command A, and you can change it all to body copy. So there it is, all in body copy. And then I'm going to click off it, go into my first paragraph and click on intro, and then anywhere I click in that, you can see is body copy, except the first line, which is intro. So that's how I set my paragraph styles, and that's how we ensure consistency for all of our magazine pages. So when you're bringing your features in, just make sure that every area that you want to be body copy, that you have highlighted it all, pressed body copy once you've set them up. And then, because you'll have a different style for your intro, and most likely have a different style, you will place yourself in the first intro part and click intro, and there it's all done. So that's how we format our text. The next tutorial will show you how to wrap the text around pictures.